Ben Spoke, Pirate Life, Moondog. So Fermecraft is an automation package for the craft beverage industry. So you'll find Fermecraft in distilling, winemaking and brewing.
Do you think that that's what is potentially missing from sales and marketing?
Sales, when you boil it down, is a transference of belief.
iPhone.
My father used to say to me, a tradesman has pleasures that an office person never even understands. Threading and bolting and screwing and fitting off and stripping cable and connecting stuff and testing. That's a gift from God, that stuff. And I actually went to the Warren Bradford School of Business and it cost $180,000. I haven't spoken about it much, but effectively after that business, I had a mental breakdown. And I found myself, was in hospital for 2 weeks. And from that, I understood how dark sometimes owning a business can be. One of those winemakers says to me, he goes, we've got to put this trade waste system in. He's best friends with that brewer and that brewer and that brewer, and all of a sudden we're doing work in breweries. If someone said to me right now, knowing what you know now, would you go through that again? And the answer would be
Running a trade business is hard, and often the pressures that come with it can be overwhelming. But what happens when it all comes crashing down? Well, in this episode, I speak with Warren Bradford, the owner of Deacam Electrical and Fermecraft, an automation system for craft brewers that is now distributed across the world. Trust me, this is not the way I thought this interview was going to go. But it is a reminder that you often have no idea what your mate might be going through. And if you are struggling with mental health yourself, then I do recommend searching TIACS. That's TIACS. It's a hotline for tradies that was designed by the guys from Trademut. And you can call them directly on 0488 846 988. And if you've got a mate that you think might benefit from this episode, just share it with them. The more people I get listening to this podcast, the more opportunities I get to have awesome guests on. All right, let's get straight into it.
Warren,
Yes.
You bloody legend. Welcome to the podcast.
great to be here.
So I'm going to hit you with really important questions straight up. What's your favourite drop?
Oh, you're going to get me in trouble here. Look, I have a few. I have the Pale out of Hargroves Hill is a cracker.
Ah, very nice. Yeah.
Crankshaft out of Ben Spoke is also extremely good.
A crankshaft.
Yeah,
Never heard of that one.
Yeah, it's actually got voted Australia's #1 beer probably 2 years in a row, I think, in the hottest 100 craft beers.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'm quite particular. Stone and Woods obviously a very good beer. So there's multiples. We're lucky. We're served by very good craft beer in Australia.
So obviously you're in the game of craft beer.
Yes.
At the moment.
Yes.
Can you though take me back to when you first began? I'm talking at school. When was it that you decided that you wanted to become an electrician? And how was that received?
So I was at a private school. I think I was the only student out of my year group to go into a trade.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
The only one?
The only one. Now that wasn't a big year group in those days. We had about 120 students in that class.
Okay.
And I was the only one to go and do a trade straight out of schools. Others may have gone since and done more trade, but I was definitely the only one. I got accepted into marketing at Monash and chose not to do that and go to a trade.
Yeah.
And I think my school still used the fact that I was going into marketing as part of the yearbook.
No.
Yeah, when they do the summary of where all the students end up, right? I don't think my school liked the fact that I was off doing a trade, so they used the fact that I was doing it, they used the fact that I was meant to be going to marketing in the yearbook. Now, whether that was a mistake or, an honest mistake or not, I'm not sure, but it still is a point of interest when you look back at the old yearbook.
Are we allowed to name the school?
Yeah, I went to Luther College
in
Croydon here in Melbourne, and it was a great school. Thoroughly enjoyed it. It was so good that I sent both of my children to that school. One has now just started his apprenticeship as a fitter and turner.
What a legend. That's great.
Yeah, he loves it actually. It's really good. I'm really proud to see him take that trade up.
Yeah.
It's a dying art form,
particularly
in Australia, and he's inherently busy. The business that he works for is very busy doing sort of particular food and beverage skill set kind of work. So I think it's a good pathway for him.
Yeah.
My other son hasn't finished high school yet, so we don't know exactly where he's going to end up. I don't think he'll be a tradesman, but I'm not sure.
So how did you feel about how it was received by the school?
It was definitely, I wouldn't like to say it was looked down upon, but it certainly wasn't promoted.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I think now looking back in all of the career meetings that I had, and my school really battled to figure out where I was going to fit,
Yeah.
you know. And they did a lot of work with me. They were very good to me in trying to find correct vocations that would suit my personality and what I enjoyed doing. And at no stage was a trade mentioned.
Oh, no, I don't want to call out private schools specifically because
Yep.
I went to a public school
Yep.
in Montana and I had exactly the same experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was not any talk of trades. In fact, there was a little bit with the year 10 TAFE training. What do
Yep.
they call it? VCAL, I think.
VCAL, yeah.
Yeah, but
So that wasn't around for me.
at
We
all,
had
you didn't have an option?
no ability to go and do, absolutely none.
That's so bad.
Yeah, we had a level of trade at the school, which was sort of metalwork and woodwork. They were more taught though on artistic levels. You know, you weren't what I mean is, you know, metalwork, you were making pieces of art out of metal. It wasn't often that you were doing something practical or structural. And the same with wood. You know, we were doing pieces of furniture, so which is more cabinet making, you know, a more artisan sort of craft for wood rather than framing, as an example. So we definitely didn't have, I had no exposure to trade, proper trade at high school at all.
So how did you went from school into your
straight into a trade.
apprenticeship
Yep.
and immediately after started Deacam, is that right?
Well, no, I've had probably an interesting pathway to get to Deacam. So I went and I used to ride a lot of push bikes when I was a kid, used to race push bikes, and one of the families that I knew, they were an electrician. I did some work experience through school holidays. So what I did was my school holidays, probably at the request of my mum, was often filled, particularly in year 11 and year 12, with doing work experience, which is still a really good pathway into a trade. I still maintain it's a great way. So I got to do a trade for, say, 2 weeks. I got to meet the guys in business there that were doing it. And I sort of just was offered an electrical apprenticeship. I took it on, you know, and off I went. Now, 6 months in, I decided I didn't like it, you know, and...
What were you doing? What type of electrician?
I was doing domestic electrics.
Yeah.
Which actually I really enjoyed, and I probably wasn't mature enough. I still didn't have, I only got my license 6 months into my apprenticeship, so I was in year 12 as a 16 and 17-year-old, so I was quite young.
Yeah.
So I probably wasn't mature enough to understand the opportunity that was there, and I left the trade for about 12 months.
Oh.
Yeah, and then I realised I realised pretty quickly that no one was taking me seriously. I had really nothing of any merit to do. You know, I was good at sales. I could definitely speak and communicate, but I felt I'd missed an opportunity. And at that stage, my father is was involved in sort of manufacturing facilities, and he knew a number of industrial electricians. And again, I was offered to continue my apprenticeship, but this time in combustion engineering electrics.
Combustion engineering?
Yeah, which was like I don't think in electrics you could get two completely opposite skill sets.
Yeah.
Right? Like I was working on mysteries without any clues, you know, to paraphrase from Bob Seger. So I just was there, I was wiring panels and working on PLCs. I mean, I was working on PLCs in 1996. Variable speed drives, PLCs, and high-tech stuff. I didn't understand it, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And I lasted about 2 years doing combustion engineering, and then I was offered an apprenticeship. Well, I was basically offered, that was working for a single operator.
Yeah.
He was getting slow, and I could see the writing on the wall that maybe I would have to start looking around because I thought we were going to be able to work. And again, just through contacts and your friends, you know, I was offered a job at a business called JDN Monocrane, building overhead travelling cranes, fully automated overhead travelling cranes. And I went from combustion engineering, where you can't see anything happen. It's just getting hot, you know. Then you go to overhead cranes, which are moving, they're going up and down, they're travelling. You can hear them, they're lifting goods. You know, it was it was everything that I'd wanted, you know. So I got to finish my apprenticeship in overhead travelling cranes, and I was exposed to some awesome technology that I could see. Whereas combustion engineering, you can't see it. You know, it's just gas and we're burning it and all that stuff. But in cranes, they're moving around, you know, and that was awesome. So I just, still to this day, I love cranes. You know, it was a really...
How many people have said on camera, I got exposed to overhead travelling cranes?
Yeah, in a good way.
It was the best thing.
It was the best thing.
Yeah.
You know, I worked so much. What we do now is based on my experience there. I worked for some, you know, I say now, I stand and my business stands on the shoulders of giants, you know.
Yeah.
I was neck deep in Australian manufacturing. You know, Victoria was building cars. We were building precast concrete. You know, there were fitting and turning lathes everywhere. We were CNC. I was just nuts, you know, and cranes were in every part of manufacturing. So I got to go from precast concrete to injection moulding. I got to go and work on cranes in Ford and Holden. You know, I got to travel the country doing overhead crane work. So that was just awesome. Then I graduated into sales, and I was really good at selling overhead cranes because I loved them so much, and I was a good communicator. So I found a lot of success in selling cranes for JDN. I worked for John Nottage, who was the owner of that business. He was a draftsman, but my sales boss was a guy called Colin Smith, and he was just an operator. Yeah. He was an engineer by trade, also a very good salesman, but understood the product well, knew how to sell it, and I learned a lot. So I suppose I did an apprenticeship in sales under him.
That's very unique.
Very unique. Yeah, really unique.
Yeah. See a tradie go into the sales side of it at all.
Yeah. Particularly for stuff that I was manufacturing, right? So I knew it. So I was really young, and I was competing against crane sales guys that were probably twice my age and were really experienced. But I've got to tell you, when we came to the big meetings at, say, BHP and Ford and Holden, I could hold my own, because when we're talking about PLC code and encoders and variable speed drives, I wasn't talking from a book. I was talking because I'd wired them. You know, my level of, you know, that trade experience to that stuff is second to none.
Yeah.
You know, so we'd often get asked why we're using a certain type of PLC, and I could explain it in depth why we like to use it for that application, you know, and everyone, you know, although I was young, it was just accepted, off I went. So I think the trade background in cranes then grew into the sales. So it was a really good time of my life, you know, I loved it.
Do you think that that's what is potentially missing from sales and marketing, is just prior experience to the product or service that someone's selling?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's why I've got clients that have said, I onboarded you because you understand the background of what we do.
Yes.
And hopefully that resonates in the marketing.
Yeah, because you're speaking from the heart. I think sales, when you boil it down, is a transference of belief. You know, my job as a salesman selling something to you is to me to transfer my passion for the product to you. So I was good at cranes because I was passionate about it. I wouldn't be able to sell something I wasn't passionate about, whereas really good sales guys can. I can't do that. I sell on belief, you know, and passion and experience. Yeah.
So you told me before this podcast that you weren't into marketing or sales, but it looks like you've transitioned through and getting ready to move into your business just in a very short period of time. So when did you then transition into Deacam?
Well, I then left that business, and I started another business in off-road four-wheel drive.
Really?
I loved competing in all my friends in off-road stuff. Yeah,
expensive hobby.
And I actually went to the Warren Bradford School of Business, and it cost $180,000. So
the price.
I learned really quickly how bad I was at business. I was good at sales, which enabled the business to survive longer than traditionally, you know, failed businesses do, but it was still a failure.
Can you go into a little bit more detail into what the failure was?
I wasn't diligent enough and organised enough to follow the paperwork, you know, and understand my margins and understand product supply. That was where I fell over. So I was quite good at moving the product. Again, I was passionate about the stuff that I was selling, but business is so much more than sales, you know, and I had to close that shop down. I still have friends from that era now, very good friends, exceptional friends, some of them that are inherently successful now in that industry. Most of the modern Australian four-wheel drive businesses, I knew those guys. I'm going away with the guys from Ultimate 9 in a few weeks. That's an inherently successful business. So it wasn't a waste of time, but it was definitely a learning curve. And I haven't spoken about it much, but effectively after that business, I had a mental breakdown.
Really?
Yeah, and I found myself, I was in hospital for 2 weeks. Didn't really know why. I really couldn't function. It was an inherently difficult time.
Did you have the mental breakdown before you stopped the business, or you stopped it and
it was delayed?
It was delayed.
Yeah.
Almost like a post-traumatic stress?
It was. I mean, it really was.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you have, I'd had a relative successful, I think my friends called it a success aptitude. I had a high success aptitude. So I always felt I was going to succeed, and I still do. I'm a positive person. Yeah. And when you figure out that you've lost all your money, you've put yourself back years, I was relying on my wife at work. I'd just had 2 young children I had to supply for and couldn't do it, So yeah, it was probably post-traumatic stress.
So you also had the family as well. I mean, because I know how something like that might feel to do that.
It's difficult.
Yeah, it would have been. What type of support was out there at the time?
Little, but that's no one's fault. There's really, for most people that are battling through that kind of stuff, even now, there's not a lot of support unless you know exactly where to find it and know how to pitch it.
Yeah.
And one of the great things that I learned from that, and I, the great thing about that whole time in my life is if someone said to me right now, knowing what you know now, would you go through that again? And the answer would be yes. I think it was one of the greatest growths of my personality and understanding of myself ever. I don't think you can't buy it, what I got, because what you find out quickly is no one can help you but yourself. So I started to implement, and this is the reason I went back to my trade. This is a great story, right? Yeah. Because I was working for Cooper Tyres in four-wheel drive, and I loved Cooper Tyres. I loved the job, but I had a lot of time on my own driving. I had a lot of time.
Yeah.
And that's bad for a person that has a really functioning brain. I overthink a lot of things. So I realised that in order to get myself well, I had to go back to my trade. So I finished on the Friday and I started pulling cables through houses on the Monday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, for myself. So when most tradesmen know that you've always got friends in a community around you that's quite keen on, getting you to do something for them or whatever. So I actually had work that I could go straight into, which was great. So I could earn money.
Yeah.
So I started on the Monday, and I was an industrial electrician, but you can't walk into an industrial electric jobs, right? So I took 2 days off a week to knock on doors of factories for industries that I knew would require my services. And then the other 3 days, I would go and pull cables and fit power points off and crawl under houses and do the domestic stuff, right? So my domestic knowledge was enough to make me enable me to survive. And then gradually over time, it doesn't take long, maybe 6 weeks, I started to lock in those industrial jobs.
Yeah.
And because of my skill set in cranes from JD and Monocrane, I was very well received at a number of crane businesses. I could walk into work as subcontracting in cranes, which was fantastic. And then I was sort of back on the path, and that's really where Deacam started. So that was in 2007. Deacam was that was as Warren Bradford Electrics. Deacam was registered in 2008 because a good friend of mine said, I can't employ you on these big jobs as Warren Bradford Electrics. It just looks like you're a single operator. You need a business name that can grow with you. So at that stage, we changed to Deacam, and my father's business was called Kelwar, which was Kelly and Warren.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and so my business is called Deacam, which is Deacon and Campbell, my 2 boys.
Oh,
yeah.
That's awesome,
right?
Yeah, that's
so
a great story.
All of these things line up to put you in a position for success. Like you never, all of those opportunities I had and those hard times put me in a position to start Deacam. And the thing I'm most proud of now, Deacam's been going 17 years or so, 16 years. The thing I'm most proud of in that time, we've graduated 14 electricians to A grade.
No.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It's the greatest thing we've done. So we have now electricians out in the Victorian trade circles that we've trained, and I can tell you that every one of them would be doing great work, you know.
That's, for the size of your company, how many people do you employ currently?
Now we employ 20, but in those times we employed apprentices early. So I would have had, I think my first employee was an apprentice.
Wow.
Yeah, and then we had to actually get a tradesman because what I've understood now about my role is I'm good at selling the passion of what we're doing. So provided we've got good tradesmen, I can keep the business afloat by selling the service, right? So, apprentices are very important to our business. But all of that learning, my understanding of how my own personal ways that I work I think has made me a better employer for people. I think the morale at Deacam is exceptional. So where we are not good, you know, there's a lot of, you know, parts in our business that, you know, that I fall over at. You know, people will tell you my organisational skills are rubbish. Often things go in one ear and come out the other, you know. Yeah. But the things we're good at is the team's really strong. They enjoy their job. They know I've got their back. Their customers see it when we turn up. So I'm very proud of the team there. It's
funny, often when I speak to, you know, relatively successful people in business, the same things come through, and it's often that they've tried different things and failed before they actually come through to succeed. Yeah. And everything builds on itself. Those skill sets that you learnt from four-wheel driving, you know, to all the other stuff you did, they all compound. Yeah. You know? So it's not like you're not using the skills from your failure.
No, you use all of them.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you know the sting of it.
Yes, exactly.
Like it stings.
Right? Yeah.
You know, and I kind of, from my four-wheel drive industry, you know, we're always on UHF radios, right? And I refer this to squelch. So squelch, we used to be able to turn the squelch down, you know, depending on how good the radio reception was. The squelch is effectively a filter, right? And most people have a level of filter for, it's called mental illness now. I don't really see it as that. I just see it as part of my personality, right? So I'm good at stress to a certain level, right? And then it breaks through. The squelch breaks through, right? And most people are the same. Some might have higher squelch settings than I do in certain situations, and I have higher squelch than them in others. It's just the way the whole world works, you know? So now I understand where those breakthroughs are, and I know what I've got to do about it. So early on, in fact, I credit learning how to ride a dirt bike as saving my life.
How so?
Well, because I was used to racing four-wheel drives and hanging off winch cables and all that kind of stuff. Unless I was doing extreme four-wheel driving, it didn't really
do it for you.
No, it didn't do it for me, you know. Wow. And I just thought I need to get, and I couldn't afford it. Four-wheel drive is inherently expensive, right? Like really expensive. So when I had no money and I had to start my business, you know, coming out from my time in hospital, I had to do something that I could afford, you know. And really, buying a dirt bike is not that expensive. And I had friends that were very good dirt bikers, and I said, I just need to learn how to ride dirt bikes. And when you're in a dirt biking community, you understand no one cares how slow you are. They just wait for you, right?
Oh, great.
So you just turn up, you know. I would have fallen over 10 times. I've actually provided, you know, roles of comedy routines for them as they're watching me struggle getting hills, right? But it saved my life. It really did save my life. And from that I understood how dark sometimes owning a business can be, but I also understood the mechanisms to get out of it, right? And to this day, I try and keep up a routine where I go to gym, right? I try and exercise as much as I can because I know that my secret weapon is that routine, which I'm not good at. So if I focus on it, right, it starts to, you know, keep me in a really good state. So all of those things you learn, you know, you don't learn that unless you've got to figure it out for yourself.
It sounds like you've been able to build up a really good mental toolkit for yourself. Do you transfer that onto your employees? Is there some sort of program that you run, or
it's not so much a program, but I think it's one of my greatest achievements is sharing with some of the guys at work exactly how I've worked through things, you know. And I understand, you know, my father used to say to me, you know, a tradesman has pleasures that an office person never even understands. And
that's great.
There's nothing truer, right? For you to go to work and turn up at 7 o'clock in the morning and actually have mapped out in front of you tasks that involve your hands, that involve threading and bolting and screwing and fitting off and stripping cable and connecting stuff and testing, that's a gift from God, that stuff. right? Like if you want to go to work and actually focus on something that can protect you, you know, in terms of your mental strength, you can't beat a trade. It's brilliant for it,
Yeah.
you know. I know that some people have bad stories about trade and get exposed to, you know, tough times when they were apprentices. That wasn't the experience for me. I had nothing but the best of trainers, you know, and I pass it on now to our guys, you know. So when they're battling, I'm like, trust in the routine. It'll get you through, you know. The sun will come up tomorrow, right? Like just focus on what you know, and it will strengthen you, and it does. You know, routine. Stuff to look forward to that you enjoy doing is the secret to life.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, and tradesmen get it
back
right.
on the tools,
yeah,
mate. What are you doing?
And no one else gets it. Like unless you know, I can talk for hours on end about how I love picking up a Milwaukee tool or a Hilti tool, and you know when you're talking to a similar person because the eyes light up and they're like, oh, don't you just love that? You know, and I'm like, I do. I love how they've figured that out, and I love how that works. And every time our guys like, I love tools.
Yeah.
You know, and we were very early on some of the new Milwaukee stuff that we use now daily. You know, all the cordless thread cutters and cable cutters and die punchers and crimpers, you know. And every time our guys use them, I go, didn't you love that? They're like, yeah, it's so good, you know. So these are great pleasures, right? Like it really does drive being a tradesman is just a superb occupation.
And I think for those that might be struggling in a trade, we talked before the podcast that sometimes you don't come into your own until you learn that skill set and you understand it better.
Yeah.
You know, I started to really enjoy my trade, firstly when I found the right industry, and that was industrial. I loved food manufacturing. At Cadbury, so many moving parts, all of the cool PLCs and automation.
Conveyors everywhere.
Warehouse. The kitchens got me. It just how complex they were. It was ridiculous. You know, but then also being good at something makes you want to continue to do it.
Yes.
Because you're good.
Yeah.
You know, and there's inherent competition amongst tradies as well, right?
Oh, for sure.
You know, I know this little bit of information over what this guy does. So it kind of makes you feel like you're a little bit better than the other guy.
Yeah, well, there's a level of healthy competition with it, you know. But yeah, like all of our guys would consider themselves good at certain parts of the trade that the others at Deacam are not.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of them are right. You know, we have, like I'm a bit of a hack sparky in terms of I'm very good on breakdowns. So my skill set from overhead cranes was fixing them at all times of the day and getting them operating. So I understand how to go around things, you know. So my skill set is similar to another guy at work, David Stowe. He's a crane guy. So we're hacks, right? Yeah. But if you look at installations, we're nowhere near on the other members of the team. They can install stuff brilliantly. You know, I turn up at some of the jobs that have been installed, which involve cable tray work and, you know, classic industrial electrics. I'm like, I wouldn't even know how to get this good. Like, these guys are awesome at this. So the team's strong because of the different skill sets, right? But knowing that too, I'm proud of the fact, like I'm okay with the fact I'm a bit of a hack over here because they appreciate that I'm not a hack over here. So that's okay, you know? I can't be good at all parts of it.
Well, obviously that might have been a strategic choice on your part to pick people that are specifically, you know.
Well, that's what happens. Yeah. We go, if it's, you know, if it's a big install job and we need it really, really precise, well, we're going to get, you know, members of the team, they're going to do it, right? If it's a breakdown, other members of the team will often do it, you know. And our Emma in the office, she knows all that. So she'll be like, it's this kind of breakdown, I'm going to send this guy to it.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, because she knows that, you know, he'll have a head start against some of the other guys.
So obviously you've been able to build this business up to a decent size where you can employ several, you know, tens of employees.
Yep.
You don't tend to get to these places without marketing. Where do you see marketing fitting? And that doesn't need to be like outbound direct marketing. It can be also just relationship building.
Oh, for sure.
Like
for sure.
How have you been able to build it to a point where you are today?
Well, I suppose I maximised the community in which I associate in order to grow my business. Now, that sounds bad. Like, I didn't make friends to grow my business, but I certainly...
Do we cut that out?
Well, it's honest, right?
Yeah,
you know, like, most times, and I always say this to my kids, you know, you never know who you're talking to. right?
100%,
So you always need to be open to what they're going to tell you. You know, I love that phrase that Jordan Peterson says, that the guy you're talking to probably knows 1,000 things that you don't, right?
That's a great saying.
So the more you shut up and listen, the more you'll figure out, you know. And the story for us moving into beverage, craft beverage, you know, is completely opposed to overhead cranes, right? Well, I was playing basketball in Hillsville with winemakers, right? One of those winemakers says to me, he goes, oh, we've got to put this trade waste system in. It's got a PLC in it, you know. Do you reckon you can do it? I'm like, yeah. Well, then we did that. That was the first custom-built trade waste processing plant in the Yarra Valley, aside from Domain Shandon. It went into Oak Ridge. We won an award for excellence for it. It was brilliant. Full touchscreen control, PLC, beautiful. Still operating to this day, right?
Who gets pumped up about
trade waste?
Trade waste, automation. I love it.
Well, it's just like, let me at it. You know, what an opportunity. And then that grew. So we did a good job there, and then, you know, those customers talk to other customers. The great thing about the craft beverage industry is they're all very good friends with other businesses. It's not a competitive, it is out, I'm sure in Dan Murphy's, you know, they want to sell more than the next guy, right? But when it comes back to the winemaker and the brewer and the distiller, they're all really happy to support the other businesses, you know. I was lucky enough that my kids went to school with Cam McKenzie's kids, you know, so we got a walk-up start at Four Pillars, arguably the greatest gin brand in the world at the moment.
Aren't they
just
killing
you know,
it?
My kids went to school with them, right? Now, you know, you don't get those opportunities, you know, and that's why I think community is fantastic. And I don't know another place like Australia where that happens so much. People say, oh, we're tall poppy. I say, oh, maybe sometimes. Other times, all I've seen is people wanting to help me, you know?
That's amazing.
And really, so the marketing has just been from that, you know. And I remember knocking on doors. So I was up the road from the White Rabbit Brewery, knocked on their door. They had complex automation that had been dragged over from the Little Creatures original brewery, which was Fremantle. That came over, and that formed the base of the production facility at White Rabbit in Hillsville. Well, I knew all that tech, right, because of my history in overhead cranes, really. And I fixed variable speed drives for the brewer there, Jeremy at the time, and then, you know, he's best friends with that brewer and that brewer and that brewer, and all of a sudden we're doing work in breweries. So the marketing has been organic, to use that term,
Yeah.
but it's true. You know, it's just, I've knocked on doors and spoken about where we, you know, have skill set, and every now and then that's, you know, been accepted. More often than not, it's, you know, you get nowhere with cold calling, but it is a numbers game. So the more doors you knock on and questions you ask, and the more opportunities you'll get. So that's how traditionally we've done it. We don't really do much formal marketing aside from the community that we work in, you know.
So some might say that you have been lucky. I mean,
absolutely,
geographically.
Yeah, I've been very lucky.
You are.
Yeah.
And then also, you know, getting referrals from other people.
Yeah.
I know it can be difficult for some tradies to get work, but there is a saying that says, you know, luck is where preparation meets opportunity. And obviously you have been able to create a business that's been able to be there when it is required.
We've been able to pick up that initial luck, and then grow with it. I was lucky that my father was Australia's first powder coater, right? So now powder coating is a real, you know, it's everywhere now in trade, right? But like overhead cranes, powder coating was in a lot of different industries. So when I was cold calling on a business, believe it or not, often they would know my father, right? What? So yeah, honest to God. So I would turn up at, you know, a factory over in Campbellfield, and they were manufacturing something and it had a level of powder coating in it, you know, and I'd say, oh, my father was a powder coater, and they'd go, not Clive Bradford, you know? And I'd go, yeah, that's my dad. And then what I got then, I got the first 5 minutes for free, right?
That's gold.
It's gold. I got the first 5 minutes for free. Now after that, like very much like you're saying, that was my luck.
Yeah.
Is I got the first 5 minutes for free. Now then I had to make good, but those first 5 minutes you can't buy that. Exactly. And the next thing I say to, you know, it's my responsibility now for my team at work and for my children and for my community to pass that on, right? So that every time that we do work, we try and do the best we can, so that, you know, when one of our apprentices is working for themselves and they said, I did work for Deacam, and they go, right, we know the work that Deacam does, so you're going to get a start here for that. That's important, you know, and that drives me a lot. I think of all the customers I deal with, of all the mistakes and failures we've done, all of them would be happy to provide an opportunity for one of our team.
Are you able to share one of your biggest failures that has taught you the biggest lesson?
Oh, there's so many. There really is. I fail all the time. I fail more than I succeed.
Which is often what makes the most successful people, honestly, particularly if you can learn from the mistake.
Well, I think now I've even where I've battled is I can fail and fail at the same thing again.
You're
Really?
You're an expert.
I go, geez, I knew that was going to happen. The biggest failure that I've made in work would be not trusting my gut. We built a machine, years ago that was inherently hard to commission. Very, very difficult. And I remember thinking to myself lying in bed when the order was given to us and I had the ability to say no to it, that I should say no to this, right? And what I battled with was ego. I wanted to build it. I wanted to build it in Australia. We were importing machines at that stage. I wanted to build it in Australia. I wanted to learn. I wanted to give the opportunity to our guys all of the good things. But there was also ego. I wanted to do it to say that we could do it. And that was the point. I'd bitten off more than I could chew. And we got through it, but that was almost a second dirt bike. So I think what I've learned is to stay in the margins of my lane. Deacam never stays in its lane. We're very good at weird stuff, right? But I do have to appreciate that all of the passion in the world, all of the engineers in the world sometimes can't get over the fact that we're building something for the first time and there's a lot of learning that comes from it. So to sum all that up, I would say my biggest failures come from my ego and being able to temper that as I get older, that probably I wasn't able to when I was younger. I'm able to temper that more so now. That's my learning, is to sort of try and figure out whether it's ego driving it or not.
I think there's so much power in saying no.
Yeah. And I'm not good at it.
Yeah. I think a lot of business people, this is just a new opportunity for them. They want to say yes to everything. I'm guilty of that all the time.
Yeah. I think it breeds success, right? Like,
it can.
You've got to sort of be able to weave through that and make it work. And as long as you've got the success in the right places, you can grow from it. But I agree, I should learn to say no more often. But then I go, well, maybe we wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of work in tier 1 infrastructure, and we do it in weird spaces. So if you find us working at North East Link or at the Benalla Precast Yard, which builds all the concrete sections, where they're working on machines, not so much doing normal commercial electrics, right? Well, we fell into those jobs because one of our electricians was picking up cable on a job site, and the project manager there thought it was incredible. An electrician was cleaning up after himself. I know that's a cliche, but it's true. It's true. So true. And Lee Anderson was packing up, and this project manager says, I don't care what it requires. We need to give these guys an opportunity. Now, from that, we have grown into, the complete design of the electrical design of the Benalla Precast Yard for Westgate Tunnel and now North East Link, which is massive, the biggest precast facility in the Southern Hemisphere. Now, that all came from one of our electricians being spotted picking up cables, So, and that was on a job that was outside of our normal operating as well. We decided we were going to have a crack at it and do it. So from that came an opportunity that has now grown into the Benalla Precast Yard, right? So, yes, I should stay in my lane, but yes, sometimes when you stray out of it, it gives you opportunities that you wouldn't get if you don't back yourself. So it is a fine line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for those listening, Sparkies do clean up. They actually do.
I don't know one that does. Lee Anderson.
The only one?
They're much better now. Tradesmen out, Victoria produces very good tradesmen now.
I do want to touch on apprentices and the type of tradies that we are producing, or could be producing.
Yeah.
But I want to first get into, you talked about staying into your lane.
Yes.
Something that you were able to compound your knowledge on, which is by the sound of it, was one of the better decisions in your business career, is creating Fermecraft.
Yes.
So do you want to speak?
It's like my baby.
Yeah. So that's building on the knowledge you've already had in Deacam.
Yeah.
And making and productizing. And I was very impressed with you creating a product, because it's not something that tradies tend to do or understand very well.
Yeah.
So who are currently using Fermecraft? And what does it do?
So it's too many to mention. So Fermecraft is an automation package system for the craft beverage industry. So you'll find Fermecraft in distilling, winemaking, and brewing.
Are there any big beer names that we could?
Oh, almost all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were talking about Benspoke before. Benspoke, Pirate Life, Moondog, Kaiju, Four Pillars, Levantine Hill, where we are today, Oak Ridge Wines. You know, I'm a very proud exporter of Australian Victorian electrician skill set. So we now have Fermecraft running in the US, the UK, Europe, Hong Kong. So we're in all continents, bar obviously the poles, I think.
Oh my God.
Incredible. It's an incredible story. Yeah. And it came from working in the industry and watching the value of product and the poor level of control they had over it. So I was watching, let's say once beer gets manufactured and goes into a ferment vessel to sort of complete its journey, it's pretty expensive. You know, it could be $10,000 worth of beer in that fermenter. When I was working in craft brewing on the tools, I would often see failures through the system that could be the chiller, could be valving, could be a number of factors, would actually render that beer useless, and they would put it down the drain.
How often is something
all
like
the time.
Really?
Craft brewers, everyone in craft beverages knows this story too well. You know, the failure of equipment and the cost it does is hard. So I said, look, you're using Corel controllers, which are effectively a single control with a temperature probe, opens a valve, it's separate, it doesn't talk to anything. You often find a Corel controller running an industrial fridge. You'll see it's that little device up the top of the fridge giving the temperature, right? Well, they're using that solution to basically produce their product. And I was like, wow, in industrial terms, we do this a hell of a lot differently. So the very first Fermecraft went into a brewery called Cavalier in Laverton, and they'd lost beer that cost them about $16,000. And Steve rang me and he said, okay, we're going to do it. Because I'd obviously, you know, I would have spoken to everyone that was prepared to listen to me about how we should do this.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the first one, we went to Cavalier, and straight away it was able to give them a visual across their entire ferment tank farm, FV farm. And they hadn't seen that before. They had to walk to everyone to look, and it was able to go red when it was outside of its target temperature. They loved it, right? And that's where it grown from. So the name Fermecraft comes from ferment control for craft beer, Fermecraft.
Okay.
And taking my, you know, this will play right into your, you know, story about the whole journey, right? Because playing into my JD and Monocrane, Colin Smith teachings, I knew I had to put a product name around it, right? Because it was a product. And we were a part of, when I was at JD and Monocrane, we productized the first mass sort of crane market load dependent overspeeding system on hoisting, right? I won't go into it, right? But we were ahead of the Germans. I worked with, again, standing on the shoulders of giants. I was just the lackey. I was just plugging in cables, but JD were just rock stars then in what was called hyperspeed. So under Colin Smith, that was productized. It had a name, it had a logo. We started to sell it. And I saw very quickly the fact that customers stopped talking about which crane they were buying, and they would start to talk about hyperspeed, and then later on iGlide, which was sway control for cranes, before the Germans were doing it, you know. And I took that learning and then I put it into Fermecraft. I put a name around it, you know, and we started to talk about the system, you know. Fermecraft is not just a PLC or a touchscreen, it's a system. It's the way that it works in the field. It's the way the sensors talk to each other. That's Fermecraft, you know, and I understood the passion behind it early was Fermecraft is automate, get your weekends back, right? Because what Fermecraft does is it delivers a change of life to craft beer owners and operators, because I would watch, you know, small business guys go in there on a Monday morning and figure out their chiller had crashed over the weekend and all of their beer was gone, you know? Like the value, the heartache, you know, some of them were in tears, right? Well, Fermecraft gives them their life back, right? Because it gives them up-to-date alarms that they can choose to ignore or act on, depending. The alarm has great info that comes through. So when we talk about this for the craft beverage industry, there's a lot of people nodding along often. Yeah, that works, you know.
Was it purposeful that you've been able to, in one sentence, automate and get your life back, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
you are conveying value. And I want to sort of pinpoint that down because it's really important for those that are trying to market their business is that to try and market value over features.
Yes.
So you could say, this is a system that has a PLC. It's got the best PLC.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and it's got all these connected. Like, these sensors are awesome.
Yeah.
But what does it actually mean to the client, the person that you are actually selling it to? So you had it in the bag. You've got target market. You know exactly who your target market is.
Yeah, which is a great thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also you're selling value and the benefits of it. You're not selling features.
Yes.
It sells itself.
It really does, right? And when, you know, we've had great success now in the UK. We've got an agent over there that just gets it.
Yeah.
You know, that our business in the UK at the moment is rocketing along. You know, you'll find Fermecraft in some really, I can't tell you where, but some very famous craft breweries in the UK.
Really?
Shortly, yeah, which is exciting. So they get it, and most craft brewers get it, you know, and that's where the growth is. But it's funny, a few things in my business I came up with, you know. Fermecraft is one, automate, full stop, get your weekends back, that was another one. And we had a team of marketing people looking at it that hated it.
Yeah,
Hated
really?
it. Yeah, hated it. Hated it. Didn't like it at all, you know. In fact,
I want to compare this to, there was a really famous business called Ashley Madison. You might be aware of it, right?
Yeah.
They went through a whole marketing thing and they came up with life's short, have an affair.
Yep.
I know it's not
brilliant.
the same.
It's brilliant.
It is, yeah. It's exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
You're calling out two benefits very, very quickly.
Yep.
You know, I love it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, and it's actually, it's resonated with me more, you know, in the years since we've come up with it. I really see it now. I go, I just fell onto that. It just came out.
It's brilliant. It really is.
Because it's true. Because I was watching brewers not having their weekends. They're going in at a certain time to change a ferment step. Well, Fermecraft does that for them, right? They're going in to check if the chiller's in alarm. Well, Fermecraft does that for them, right? So, yes, get your weekends back. And for most people, that's where they go, oh, that means so much to me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So you mentioned that it's going, obviously, in all different continents at the moment.
Yep.
When you productize something, it may only be locally productized, meaning it was designed here, developed by yourself in Australia. Yep. How are you managing the distribution of this particular product? Do you specifically go over and oversee commissioning, or you've got agents that are doing that, or how does that work?
Yeah, great. So absolutely. These are all the things that present themselves when you start installing products overseas, right? And what we do is, the system is, because I'm a tradesman, the way that it gets installed into the field is incredible. It doesn't come from an engineering background, although Fermecraft employs engineers now, right? But really it's come from a trade background. So when I turn up and I show electricians that are installing it, you know, we're in Leith in Edinburgh, down on the docks in Edinburgh, you know, and these two electricians turn up that had industrial skill set, but very thick accents, like really thick Scottish accents. They were awesome. For them, me showing them how this system went together was possibly the most exciting part of my trip.
Oh, really?
I just loved it. They just sucked it up. They're like, oh, awesome. And they said, oh, how do we strip that? I go, we've got a tool. Oh, so we supply the Siemens tool that goes with the cable. So it strips it. It's all color-coded, the plugs that go in. Engineers don't really think like that. Tradesman does, because the tradesman goes, how am I going to fit that off?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So the system of Fermecraft is strengthened by the trade background with the engineering, right? And what we do is we've made it so it's effectively plug and play. We use really good high-tech stuff now, which there's a protocol in comms called IO-Link, which makes the sensors intelligent. You'd be aware of that from water. Water really picked up IO-Link. So we run all IO-Link sensors. It goes onto industrial Ethernet backbone, it's solid, and it gets plugged in. So what we do is we commission the first one in that continent for that agent.
Gotcha.
And then they've really got the skill set to go forward. And we use remote access technology that is just second to none. Now, it's got a very high cybersecurity control on it. And we now can commission breweries from Melbourne. We commissioned the Hong Kong brewery, which is substantial in size, was commissioned during COVID from Melbourne. And it would have been one of the only breweries in the world that would have been done like that.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a big deal. Pirate Life at the same time had to commission a brewery from Germany. And one of the brewers, Tom Whitehead, actually commissioned that here. That was during COVID. I'd say the work that Tom did for Pirate Life was awesome, and the work that we did for Hong Kong Beer Co. at the same time was awesome.
That's amazing.
All Victorian electrician skill set, right? All of it.
That's an amazing local success story.
Yeah, we have a flag on it. We have an Australian flag that goes on it. We rivet it so they can't remove it. It says, made with pride by the men and women of Deacam in Melbourne, Australia. Now there's that flag. You can see that flag in 6 continents.
Really?
Yeah, it's awesome.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Now I want to touch on the fact that you employ an engineer, and it's not the other way around, which is often the case in industry. And I'm not saying that maybe it hasn't been designed that way, but often the university system that we have kind of pushes these people to learn these skill sets, engineers, and they put them in positions where they seem higher than what trades might be. How do you think the quality of our tradesmen are throughout Victoria, or at least the ones you're training and seeing coming through?
Yeah.
Do you think there's obviously room for improvement from my perspective? Do you think there could be more tradesmen coming through? Is there anything that the schools can be doing, the TAFEs can?
So much.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd love to get my hands. I'd love to be involved in some of the ways that the direction for apprentice training is going, particularly for Victoria. I think we're in an interesting time now that when I did my apprenticeship, I was exposed to a car manufacturing Victoria, and I believe our business now operates in probably the top 5% of Australian industrial electrical businesses in terms of its size and what we do. That should not be a thing that I'm proud of, and it's not. It's actually a bad thing, because the electricians that I knew when I was doing my trade are so much more capable than what our business is. When we were producing cars, you have the best electricians, you have the best engineers, they're making things. Engineers now don't tend to make too much.
No.
Right?
No.
Now they did back then because they were running car plants, and they had to learn and understand, and really that provided a phenomenal opportunity to train tradesmen. And that's why Victoria historically has been the manufacturing centre of the country, because we had the climate that lines up with manufacturing. If you look at any of the manufacturing centres around the world, they're cold climates. Because people don't want to get up and go surfing, they might as well go to work. Right? It's true.
Yeah.
Now, that's not the case now, but in old times it certainly was. The Industrial Revolution started in cold climates.
Yeah.
Right. So Victoria was very good at manufacturing. We had a lot of power. We had all of the stuff that made sure we were great at manufacturing. Now, that's not the case now, right? And in fact, most of the electricians that are trained in Victoria now are trained in commercial, not so much industrial. I don't consider industrial installing 3-phase outlets. Yeah. I consider that commercial, right? Industrial's for me the electricians that are wiring up PLCs and variable speed drives and commissioning them. That's industrial. That's rare now in Victoria, and that's sad.
It's very sad.
It's very sad.
It's almost another trade. I say this to a lot of people that you go, oh, you're an electrician, and well, no, I'm an industrial electrician, which is so much different. I mean, obviously the electrical theory still applies. Yeah. But it is just like
it's a different skill set.
Apart.
Yeah. And it's no better than the domestic guys.
Yeah.
It's really not. Like, I look at the way domestic guys wire stuff now, I'm like, wow, the speed, the quality, like it's really good. So I don't consider myself better than a domestic electrician or a commercial guy. Absolutely I don't. But it's a different skill set. Yeah. And unless we continue manufacturing here, it will fall over. And one thing that's really sad for me is I remember exporting cranes to China.
Oh, wow.
And we were exporting cranes, tradesmen and engineers to China in order to commission cranes. Those same guys are coming back now and training us on how to do it. Now, that is scary.
Yeah.
Right. It's obviously China's a massive market, so I expect that they're growing at the level they're at. So that's not me getting worrying about what's coming in from China. What I'm saying is we used to be the leaders here, right? We're not now, and that's we need to work on that.
So what you're saying is that actually the training that's getting done with the current resources that we've got is actually not bad.
Agreed. Yep.
Yeah. But we just need to get better at potentially bringing in some more manufacturing into this country.
So the exposure to good high-level industrial electrics and everything that goes with it. You look at my son Deacam now in fitting and turning, right? Well, the more manufacturing he's involved in, the better experience he gets, right? So it's for everyone. If you want to, we often talk about these, and the next thing is, a number of times I've met people from government, and they're like, how can government assist? You just need to get out of my way. Honestly, I don't know of any small business person that would say to you, I'd rather them just keep their nose out of it.
Yeah.
I don't need the government to come and stimulate a part of manufacturing in Victoria. I need them to make sure that manufacturing in Victoria has reliable power that's cheap, right?
Yeah,
well, there's stuff in that, right? I need to make sure that manufacturing in Victoria has employment laws that enable people to employ without great risk. Employing people is inherently difficult now.
How
right?
so? Why is it?
There's so many rules in order to employ someone, and they fall on the small business owner, all of them. The pay rates, the conditions, the safety requirements, the documentation, it's all very difficult.
Yeah.
I don't see it in the modern world being able to change, but if we're able to have better access to cheap power, however it comes, have open market sort of policies where we're not just getting taxed like crazy. I mean, so my business relies on Deacam does a lot of things, and we're talking about craft beer and wine, because we're in this beautiful winery. But my Fermecraft and the Deacam installation team that relies on craft beverage relies on those guys manufacturing. We're in a manufacturing centre right now. It's just wine, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't have conveyor. Well, it has some conveyors when they're packaging. So the more successful those guys are, the more successful my business is. You see, I'm hanging on the coattails of Victorian manufacturing, right? So if you look at tax for beer and for wine and for distillers, it's so difficult for them to navigate the way the tax works, right? I really think that a lot can be done to assist craft beverage manufacture in Australia, and it comes down to tax and the way the government deals with it, Now that will help us because the fact that they get more successful, so do we.
Yeah.
We're all in it together. So I would just I really want to see us get back to manufacturing.
Yeah, I would love to see more manufacturing in this, particularly in this state. I think it's, even food beverage manufacturing is slowed down as well. It's
hard though, right? We've got some electricians that we've graduated and have gone to work in tier 1 building, Now, if they're on EBA rates, they're effectively getting close to 40% higher pay than what my electricians are that are not on those rates, right? Now, money talks when you're, you want to buy a house, you want to get married and have kids or whatever you want to do. Well, money talks, right? So you can't, I don't blame any of those of our guys or the team on site getting paid those rates, but you must understand that we can't afford those kind of labour rates in manufacturing. And if manufacturing's got to compete, we're still building all those control panels that are now in those continents around the world. They're made in Melbourne.
Really?
All of them.
That's
right?
awesome.
Yeah, and we can't continue to do that if we're facing, inflation and labour hikes. Now wages have been stagnant, agreed, right? Yeah. But not in industrial electrics. Those guys are well paid, So that's a balancing act, I don't know how to solve that part, right? But all of these things, I think, add to us being able to train very good electricians.
Yeah.
And the more manufacturing means that trade skill in industrial keeps going.
So I wanted to touch on, you mentioned earlier on about processes that weren't particularly your strongest skill set. Mm-hmm. You've been able to scale up to 20-ish
20
guys,
plus now, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's not an easy thing to do in business. What technology are you employing in the back end to help you scale? Because it's typically not done on spreadsheets at this stage. Please don't tell me you're running spreadsheets.
No, we run, we actually built our own job system years ago to manage.
Really?
Yeah. We've only just stopped using it. Oh. But it was brilliant.
Wow.
So that's a Luther College story. So I remember going to a business coach seminar once, and a lot of it was waffle and hot air. But one of the things that he said to me that I just resonated was, the great thing about IT is the rock stars are still at school.
Yeah,
right?
Gotcha, yeah.
They're not in laboratories at 60 years of age. They're at school. And so I decided to go back to Luther College, and I went and met my old IT teacher. That was still there, which was great. And I said, I need an IT rock star. I need sort of someone around year 10 that's happy to work for as casual as part of our business. Anyway, they gave us this guy, Jan, Jan's first work in IT was for Deacam,
Really?
And it was website at the start because that's what we needed. And then I said, what about this? We were using QR codes in 2011 and 12. We were using QR codes on machines we'd built. Yeah, that was all come out of Yarn.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, so we were able to scan control panels that we'd built and have full access to all the control drawings, all the automation software.
Very cool.
That was out of Yarn. That was by that stage, it must have been year 12, right? Now, Yarn has then graduated out of that work, went to uni, did computer science, I think ended up on a scholarship because some of the stuff that he'd done using our Deacam job system that he'd written was just awesome. He now runs, he works, I can't even care what the name of it, like he's a rock star IT guy.
Yeah.
Right?
You did get the rock star.
We got a rock star,
yeah.
Right? And I'm so proud of him and his business, because he sort of, I saw that kid grow up. Now we've graduated into SimPro because what our job system couldn't do, which SimPro does well, is SimPro can import pricing structure from our suppliers and it can keep them honest. So when it comes in and the delivery or the invoice doesn't match the expected cost, SimPro will flag it, right?
Yeah.
Now, and that just happens. It's not done on purpose by our suppliers, but where sometimes we can be chasing a part out of Germany that's like this big and costs $1,000, right? Mm. So it's definitely a part-centric business, and unless we have our costs tracked, they can bleed up. We did deals with Siemens on a certain touchscreen. We did it on a price, and I remember 6 months later looking at the price we were paying. Well, it was like another 20%.
Wow!
Right? And I'm like, when did that happen? Well, it happened at the start. We didn't catch it. Now, Siemens being Siemens, they go, that's okay. We got your back, right? They went back, credited it, all done, right? But if we hadn't caught that, and that wasn't malicious, that was just how it works. So SimPro is very good at that.
Yeah.
It's good at scheduling. So they use it for scheduling, So now we're on the SimPro, bandwagon.
Yeah, yep.
It's not awesome.
No system is awesome.
No,
Can I tell you, it's like every system has its strengths and weaknesses, and it just depends on what part of that you're going to use the most, I think.
Yeah, and I'm sure it does a lot that we don't.
Yeah, I mean, Aeroflow's the same.
Well, we were on Aeroflow first.
Oh, were you?
Yeah.
And it wasn't for you?
Well, it didn't. We were using it more for scheduling.
Okay.
And Aeroflow now, I think, has grown a lot. SimPro's bought Aeroflow.
Really?
I'm probably need to check that. But
Aeroflow's a local business in
So is
Ringwood.
SimPro.
Oh, really?
SimPro's Brisbane.
Oh, okay.
Which is another great story. Yeah, Ringwood, that's right. Sparky, both Sparkies, I think. Aeroflow's a Sparky, and I think SimPro was a Sparky.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
SimPro's worldwide now, I'm pretty sure. So that's another great story.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of that. I like that. So we use, we definitely stick with Australian stuff.
Yeah.
Where we can.
Yeah. I do know I've got clients on SimPro, and everyone that I speak to say we definitely don't use it to its full potential.
Yes.
There's so much in here. I wonder what we could be doing with this thing.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think as a business owner, you get done what needs to get done, and then you move on.
That's all you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just have to, one of our, he's now a director. He's my partner in business now. Used to be one of our tradesmen, Steve. He's got this great line that I love now. It says, if it's worth doing, it's worth half-arsing, right? And I'm like, what does that mean? He goes, well, and he in all the stuff that I'm bad at, he's exceptional at, right?
Okay.
So let's talk about the ability to pull up a large industrial project, get it installed and make it look $1 million and be functional. Steve is a rock star at it, right? But he suffers from the fact if it's not perfect, he may come back to it, right?
Perfectionism. Yeah.
So what he says is if it's worth doing, it's worth half-arsing. As in, even if I do it and get it done and get it enough, that's worthwhile. Whereas the old Steve would say, I've got to come back and finish that off or whatever. In small business, that's not how it runs. You know, you have to be fast.
Yeah.
So I don't blame anyone for not using all of Simpro because you only do what you need to do. It's like, you know, we have SolidWorks as part of our design package at Deacam. We have TIA, which is the Siemens programming software. I reckon the guys would probably operate in 5% of both those packages.
Yeah.
And they're exceptional engineers, right? So I think that's just normal now, isn't it, with software? It's so good.
Yeah. It's the 80-20 rule about everything.
For sure.
You know, you put 20% into the actual effort that needs to get done, you know, and then you're off.
Yeah.
Well, so what else is on the horizon for Deacam and the rest of your company?
Well, we're definitely doing more and more in manufacturing. You know, there's one of our neighbours is manufacturing a high-end product at the moment, and it's in R&D stage. We've been assisting them in getting the machines together, which are just cobbled up at the moment because, again, you know, it's small business. It has to make money, you know. The owner of that business loves to say, sales cures all ills. Right?
Ooh, that's
another one that Steve Jobs says is quicker to failure.
Yeah.
Right? So those guys are trying to get out the product early, and we're sort of building the machines to do that. That is scalable and will grow. We're doing a lot there. There's some other really niche manufacturing I can't talk about that's coming back to Victoria that we're involved in. So I think the future's bright for everyone. Economically, Victoria's definitely got work to do. For us, it's more manufacturing. It's Fermecraft now has been completely removed out of Deacam. It's a separate business.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, which is
wow.
It's pretty exciting.
Congrats.
Yeah, it's exciting. So Deacam now, we still build the panels for Fermecraft, but you know, now that's separate. So, you know, Deacam will continue to do its more traditional stuff, which is really industrial electrical contracting with manufacturing facilities. So we build all our own control panels. You know, we have a metal shop there. We've got 3D printing. We've got CNC cutting. So we can sort of facilitate those industrial installs that we're doing. And yeah, we're quite busy at the moment. And when people say, how's business? I go, you know, it's good. It's never as good as you think it's going to be, and it's never as bad.
Yeah.
You know, and part of that whole growth from me is understanding in those times of really positive stuff. It's like, right, you have to think as if this won't last, which is not negative. It's just smart.
Yeah.
And when you're in those times that are really tough and down, it won't last either. You know,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
and it's just, I think, I'm not sure who said it recently, but it's like, it's going well. Just wait.
Yeah.
You know, just wait.
Yeah,
Like,
that's it.
ride it out. You know, so that's, you know, that's where I see us really cementing our place in Victorian manufacturing supplies. And I'm looking forward to maybe not growing, you know, to 40 and 50 staff. I'm looking forward to really improving the work and the project that our team does in terms of saying no to more of the stuff that's external and really focusing on where we're best placed, which is in industries like this.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where I see us doing.
Well, you're certainly doing your part. I can.
So far, so good.
And I can see you're super passionate about what you do, and I think that's kind of what you need in business. You know, you need to keep that passion somehow.
Yeah.
Somehow.
It's the only thing left sometimes.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, Warren, thank you so much for coming
Thank
on
you,
the
David.
podcast. It was great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Woo! That was an awesome interview with Warren Bradford. Now, if you are struggling with your mental health, I think it's worth mentioning again that you can get in contact with TAX. Just search them up and you'll find them all over the internet. Righto, I said at the start to make sure you share this with one of your mates, but also share this with your mum. This has been the Digital Tradie. I am David List, and until next time, make sure you're creating some legendary content.